Clash Royale once had a very simple and powerful promise at its core. Put in the time, the effort, the grinding, the strategic thinking, the careful deck building, and you would be rewarded with a sense of progression that meant something. Every level up felt like a celebration. Every newly maxed card felt like a trophy. Every small improvement felt earned. For years, players justified their emotional investment and literal time commitment because the game consistently upheld the idea that progress mattered. People developed entire playstyles around hard-earned cards, mastered interactions that took months to memorize, and built identities around maxing out their favorite decks. And then level 16 came along, an update that shattered the fragile ecosystem of long-term progression and left countless players with the same feeling. Everything they worked for, everything they grinded for, everything they emotionally attached themselves to feels overwhelmingly, devastatingly worthless now. The introduction of level 16 wasn't simply a statistical adjustment, it was a psychological earthquake that rippled through the entire player base. Overnight, players watched as the ceiling they had climbed toward for years was suddenly raised by an arbitrary new tier that invalidated their achievements. It was like being told after years of climbing a mountain that someone had secretly extended the peak another 1,000 meters while you weren't looking. Not only did Supercell devalue progress, but they also forced players into a new system that demanded even more grinding, money, or both. The emotional impact here cannot be overstated. Many players who had finally reached level 14, an achievement that took literal years, found that their cards now sat embarrassingly below the new maximum, creating an instant feeling of inadequacy and defeat. All the golden cards that once gleamed proudly now felt like dull relics of a bygone era. Level 16 didn't just add 2 more numbers, it destroyed the psychological framework that Clash Royale used to keep its players motivated and loyal. For many players, the greatest pain wasn't even the cost or the effort required to reach level 16, though those are painful enough, but rather the collapse of meaning. The moment the update dropped, something in the collective mind of the player base snapped. The realization that progress in Clash Royale isn't permanent, but instead subject to being erased, overridden, and cheapened by sudden design decisions made it incredibly difficult to feel invested ever again. Players who once proudly showcased their max decks now found themselves staring at collections that felt incomplete, unfinished, and underpowered. In other games, leveling up might be infinite or expected, but in Clash Royale, the cap of level 14 had been marketed for years as the pinnacle. Reaching it meant you were done. You had reached the summit. So when the developers suddenly decided that this summit was actually just a stepping stone toward a much higher plateau, it not only felt unfair, it felt like betrayal. There's also the matter of how level 16 interacts with the core gameplay. Clash Royale is fundamentally a game of micro-interactions, precision, and tight balance. The introduction of level 16 did not just affect stats. It skewed fights, ruined established interactions, and forced players into awkward mismatches. Players who had finally achieved balanced matchups suddenly found themselves underleveled against whales or older players who had more resources. The promise of skill over stats crumbled instantly. For years, the game had tried to uphold the idea that good decision-making could beat bad leveling. Now, with level 16 cards flooding the meta, the stat gap became too large to ignore. A single higher level troop can dominate a lane, ruin trades, and invalidate outplay potential. When a game leans too heavily into raw numbers over player ability, motivation evaporates. People stop feeling like they lost because they misplayed. Instead, they feel like they lost because they simply didn't pay or grind enough, and that feeling is poison to long-term engagement. And what makes this whole level 16 mess even more ridiculous is how completely broken the level interaction has become. We're at a point where a level 14 log can't even one-shot a level 15 or level 16 princess, something it was always supposed to do since the beginning of the game. It's literally called the log, a card whose entire identity is delete squishy troops, and now it just doesn't. Same with Dark Goblin, a troop made out of paper that dies to basically anything except now, if he's even 1 level higher than your log, he survives with a sliver of HP, keeps shooting, and suddenly your entire lane is gone. That's insane. These aren't niche interactions, they're core fundamentals of the game that people learned years ago. A log not killing a princess breaks everything players have known since 2016. A level 14 fireball not killing a level 16 musketeer feels like a joke. A level 14 Mega Knight jumping onto a level 16 knight and losing the trade feels like parody. When your cards literally cannot do the job they were designed to do simply because the opponent is 2 levels higher, the game stops being strategy and becomes pure stat inflation. That's the part that hurts the most. Not just losing, but losing because your cards are physically incapable of doing what they're supposed to do, even when you play correctly.